were awarded the $10 million DRI back at the end of 2021. And there's a process to that. The state does not give away $10 million to a community and just say, go ahead and spend the money. We have to follow a certain protocol, and that protocol is set by the state. And the protocol is a little bit time consuming. So we were awarded the DRI in a public meeting back at the end of 2021. And from that point, we had to appoint a local planning committee. And the local planning committee consisted of about 16 people from the community, various segments of the community. And from that point on, we had to submit to the state, we had to formulate and submit to the state what's called a strategic investment plan, a proposed strategic investment plan, telling them exactly how we were going to spend this money, how we would like to spend the money. Then it went to the Department of State in July of 2022. It took a while because we had to have several public meetings. The process of the local planning committee was very public. We submitted that to the Department of State, and then we had to wait for them to review that, and they had to approve all the spending in the strategic investment plan. So it wasn't until November 28th, 2022 that the governor came to Gloversville with the Secretary of State and announced the awards for the projects. Some of the projects that we had proposed were not awarded. What was awarded was 16 projects altogether, or
12.
12 private projects and then 4 public projects.
Yeah.
Right, so the total was 16 projects, 4 public city projects, and then there were 12 private projects that were awarded. And that was just last fall. Now we are in the process. We recently went out to bid for an architectural firm to do the planning, so that all of the architectural drawings have to be made, and that's going to be happening over the next few months. Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you. I want you to explain, exactly what that process is. Nick's been through this a few times, so he has a knowledge of it.
Yeah, first thing I want to point out is that this $10 million is taxpayers' money, and there has to be a lot of public accountability, and that's a good thing. The problem is that all the steps that achieve accountability take time, and we have to be aware of the fact that we just can't go ahead and just do projects without public input, without a lot of good planning. Every single one of these projects has to go through not only the screening process that's going on, but we have to do all the architectural and engineering studies, environmental studies. There has to be competitive bidding, and every one of these projects is funded by a particular state agency. We have 4 projects that are funded by the Department of State. We have 4 projects that are funded by the State Homes and Community Renewal, and we have 4 projects funded by Empire State Development. Each of those state agencies has its own set of administrative policies and procedures, which unfortunately take a long time to carry out. And that's a lot of what we see in terms of the current delays. But we also have to, most of these projects, there's grant money involved, but in addition to the grant money, there's a lot of private sector investment. And these downtown business owners just don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash on hand. They have to raise the match money. And we're working with a lot of funding sources to help provide a combination of public sector and private sector funding to make these projects a reality. And that's what we're working on right now. Refining architectural plans, coming up with cost estimates, and obtaining the necessary financing above and beyond the $10 million in DRI money. We're talking about more than $10 million in private match money to the DRI funds. So it's a major undertaking just beyond the $10 million.
And Nick, these developers, the private developers, are actually putting their own money into this as well. It's not all grant money from different agencies, but there's borrowing that they have to do to make these projects happen. So, there's a lot of administrative work that has to be done, putting each project together so that it's a viable project, that the money is there to complete the project effectively, and have these businesses open at at some point in the near future.
And the environmental review process also can be quite time consuming. Every project has to go through the state Environmental Quality Review Act to assure that there are no negative environmental impacts, that we're dealing with hazardous materials such as asbestos, lead paint, or old oil tanks. This is basically a small-scale version of what we're doing with our current EPA grant in terms of identifying contaminated sites. When we're done, these sites have to be environmentally sound.
Yeah. And all these sites are within that downtown zone that's very close by. It's small in land area, because all of these projects have to be within walking distance of each other. So a lot of them really sort of depend on the success of all of the other projects around them. So it's a process that requires a lot of time-consuming paperwork. There's got to be an accountability. We really have to account for every penny that is spent in the downtown. And at the end of the day, you have really a transformation of the downtown, but it doesn't happen overnight. A lot of times I'll go in the supermarket and somebody will ask me, what'd you ever do with that $10 million? We haven't received that $10 million yet. It's still with the state and with these three agencies that Nick mentioned. So Nick, when do you expect that ground will be broken? Well, we're going to be having construction in the downtown on these projects. When do you expect that to happen? I know that it varies depending on the project, correct?
We may get lucky, and some construction may begin this year. The bulk of the construction probably won't begin until next year's construction season. The process, for example, a matter of simply getting a loan. When you go and get a home mortgage, you go to the bank, you meet a loan officer, you get the paperwork, and 30 days later you got your commitment. These are, in many cases, multi-million-dollar loans with commercial lending sources, overseen by a board of directors that meets once a month or once every 2 months. So simply getting financing can take 2 to 3 months once all the other paperwork is in place.
Most people don't realize how much work it takes, how much work behind the scenes that it takes to do these things. But these are major projects that together could transform the city and breathe new life into our downtown. And those things don't happen overnight. It's and a lot of times it's a lot of work that's not so interesting that you have to do to make it all happen. But the reward will come at the end, and I'm pretty confident now that there's nothing that's going to stop this process from being successful.